In this video, we're going to address what's called the distance problem. This topic is related to area underneath a curve, even though it might not seem like it at first. The question is, how do you compute the distance traveled by an object moving at non-constant speeds over a period of time? If we move at a constant speed, then we know how to compute the distance traveled. We have a formula for that. We have a formula which tells us that speed times time equals distance. This only works for constant speed. But what if we're moving at speed which is changing over time? So suppose we have a function v, and suppose v of t is the speed, or the instantaneous speed, at time t. Let's say that we're starting at some time and we're ending at some time. So suppose v of t is the speed at time t, where t is between a and b. So that is, our start time is a, start time, and then b is our finishing time, or our end time. And suppose we want to know what the distance traveled is during that time. Well, we can approximate it by looking at small intervals of time and imagining that our velocity or our speed at any one given interval of time is approximately constant. Well, let's write that down. So we divide the time interval. So our time interval is the time interval from A to B, into many small subintervals. So that the speed is approximately constant on any one subinterval. Let's draw a picture of our timeline. So here's our timeline. And we're starting at time A, and we're ending at time B. The idea here is that our speed is changing over time, but if we imagine dividing our interval into many smaller intervals, and these intervals might be quite small indeed, we can imagine that on any one of these intervals, the speed is approximately constant. At least we can do that if the intervals are sufficiently small. So what I want to do is I want to choose some representative in each one of these intervals that will represent the speed over that interval. So what I'm going to do, for example, is in my first interval here, I'm going to choose some time t1. So t1 is in the first interval. And then I'm going to pick some time t2 in the second interval, and so on. I'm going to divide this interval into n subintervals. So when I say many, I mean n, capital N subintervals. So this interval right here, the one ending at time b, this is the nth interval, or subinterval. So I'm going to choose a time out of this one, which I'll call t sub n. Now anywhere in the middle here, I might have the kth interval, And out of the kth interval, I'm going to choose time t sub k. These are representative times. So the idea here, over the kth interval, the speed is approximately constant. It might be changing, but we're imagining that this interval is so small that it doesn't change by much. So it's approximately constant, and so the speed over the kth interval is approximately the speed at time tk. Now, over that interval, it might change, but just a little bit. So it's going to be approximately v at tk over the whole interval. So that means we have a speed which is approximately constant over a certain length of time. Now, how long is each time interval? Well, we want all of these time intervals to be the same duration, so we call it delta t. Whenever you see delta in a calculus class, it usually means a small change. So each one of these has the same length, the same duration, delta t. All of these are delta t. So there are n of them. The total length of time to go from A to B is B minus A. And there are n of these subintervals, so each one is a length of time B minus A over n. So now we know the length of time that we're traveling, and we also know the speed that we're traveling, which is approximately constant on this interval. So on the kth interval, the distance traveled is approximately the speed over that interval, or the approximate speed, times the length of time, which is v at t sub k times delta t, which again is the duration of the interval. This is over just one interval, so to get an approximation of the total distance traveled over the time interval from A to B, add up all of the approximate distances over each interval, each subinterval. So for the first subinterval, it's going to be v at t1 times delta t plus the distance traveled, or at least the approximate distance, over the second interval, v at t2 times delta t, and so on, until we get to the end, v at t sub capital N times delta t. So again, if we look at our interval, you see that t1 is some time within the first interval. Any time will do. You could pick the right endpoint or the left endpoint or the midpoint or any point within there. And that's going to be our representative time. So if we compute the speed at t1, that tells us that over this interval, this first interval, we're going to be traveling approximately that constant speed v at t1. Now the actual speed might be varying, but it's varying by very little because these intervals are very small. This delta t is very small. So even though there's a little bit of variation in the speed over that interval, it's very small. So we can assume that it's approximately constant, and we're representing it with this v at t1. So v at t1 times the length of time you're traveling at that speed gives you the approximate distance over the first interval. t2 is our representative element of time from the second interval. So v at t2 is one of the speeds that you're traveling over that second interval. And again, since this interval is so small, delta t, this interval is so small, we're assuming that the speed is approximately constant over that interval. So the speed times the time will give us the distance traveled approximately over that second interval, and so on until you get to the last interval, which is the nth interval, which is why we have an n there. So this gives us an approximation of the total distance traveled. And it should look a little bit familiar, because this is really just like the sums that we were doing when we were computing area. In fact, if we graph the speed function, v, it's going to look something like, well, let's just graph something here. This is our t-axis, and we have some speed, so it's a positive function. We might as well just assume that it's increasing for the sake of argument. And so this is our velocity. Let's call it y equals v of t, if this is our y-axis here. So this is our interval of time from A to B. And again, we've divided it up into many subintervals. And these intervals are very small indeed. Now, the height above the t-axis is going to give you the speed at any given time. So if I pick a point and I call it t1 for our representative time in the first interval, if I go up to the curve, however high up I am, the y value tells me the speed at that time. And if I draw a horizontal line over the whole interval, notice what the area of that rectangle is. Area of the rectangle is equal to the height, which is v of t1, times the duration of time, which is delta t. So this is our approximate distance over the first interval. And if we keep doing this, if we pick a t2 in the second interval, that will give us another rectangle, and that area of that rectangle is again the approximate distance traveled. So if we add together, well, let's just draw a couple more of these in here. Notice I'm using the midpoint, but it doesn't have to be the midpoint. It could be any point that I wanted. So I could even choose one slightly off to the side of the middle. It's any point will do because the velocity, or the speed rather, is approximately constant. So it doesn't matter which point I pick, because whatever the speed is, it should be roughly the same as anywhere else in that interval, and so on. So each time, each one of these has duration delta t. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is our fifth interval. So this spot right here, that time is t5. So this height is v at t5, which is the speed, our approximate speed over the fifth interval. So if you do the speed times the time, you're going to get the approximate distance, and the approximate distance is the same as the area of this rectangle. So area is approximately the distance traveled over that time. And so if we add all of these together, to get, well, what do we get? Well, one thing we get is we get the approximate total distance. But the other thing we get is the approximate total area under the curve. So by doing these computations, we get approximately the total distance and approximately the total area under the curve. And indeed, these two things are the same. We can state that as a theorem. If v of t is the speed at time t, then the distance traveled over the time interval from A to B is the same as the area under the curve. Y equals v of t over the interval AB. So these two objects are actually the same, which is why there is a relationship between the distance traveled and the area under the curve, even though that might seem a little surprising at first. Now, one thing that's important to know about this theorem is that we're talking about speed. Speed is not the same thing as velocity. Speed is always positive, or at least non-negative. Velocity can be negative. Velocity has a size, and it also has a direction. The size of the velocity is the speed, so if v of t is velocity, then speed is the absolute value of the velocity. So you see there is a relationship. The absolute value is always going to be non-negative. If velocity is always positive, then velocity and speed are the same thing. But that needn't be the case. If v is your speed, so if velocity is positive, then when you add up all of these areas, that's going to give you the area under the curve and also approximate distance. Now, on the other hand, if you have a velocity which could be negative, it might dip below the t-axis. And if it does that, then you're no longer computing distance, you're computing what you call displacement. And displacement is how far away you are from a fixed point. So for example, if we fire a rocket straight up, and v of t is the instantaneous velocity, then as the rocket is shooting up, the velocity is positive. But as it starts coming down, the velocity is negative. And after it hits the ground, the displacement is zero. It certainly still traveled a distance, but it came back. So there's a positive distance traveled and a zero displacement because it ended up where it started.